AITA for wishing my dad good luck when all he has left is his affair partner because he won't see my brother in the hospital when she's not welcome. So, I guess I need to start at the beginning, because everything that happened after this moment doesn't make sense without it. My dad, yeah, he cheated on my mom with this woman named Fiona. This wasn't some small fling either. It went on for months, and we didn't find out about it until it was already too late. My parents divorced, and my world flipped upside down. It was all just this massive shock, and I still don't really understand how everything got to this point. The worst part? My dad didn't just cheat and move on. He married Fiona. Like, after everything that went down, he actually went ahead and married her. That's when it really hit me. He had to have been so sure that what he did didn't matter, that he could just move on and pretend like everything was fine. But it wasn't fine. It was far from fine. Now it's just me and my brother, Tyler. I'm 16 and he's 13. We were supposed to be a family, you know? A real family, not this broken mess we ended up with. I used to look up to my dad. I thought he was a good guy, that he'd always have our backs. But after everything happened, I couldn't look at him the same way. He destroyed everything, and I couldn't pretend it didn't hurt. Tyler's got mixed feelings about Dad. He still kinda holds out hope that maybe they can rebuild their relationship, that maybe things will get better. But every time he tries, Fiona is there. She's part of the deal now, and Tyler doesn't know how to handle that. He wants to be close to Dad again, but Fiona's like this permanent reminder of everything that went wrong. It's not something he can just ignore. Honestly, I get why Tyler still holds on to some hope, but I've already given up. As for me, I'm done. I can't forgive him. I don't care what anyone says, I can't. I can't forget what he did to Mom, to us. And every time he tries to act like things are normal, it feels like a slap in the face. It's like he expects us to just forget everything. But I can't. And I won't. And then there's the whole court mess. I spoke up in court a while ago, telling the judge I didn't want to go to my dad's house anymore. I didn't want to spend time with him, especially not when Fiona was always there. But you know what? The judge didn't listen. They just didn't care. Apparently, unless there's physical abuse, kids don't really get a say in custody stuff. So now we're stuck with this 50-50 arrangement. We go to Dad's house whether we want to or not. And let me tell you, neither of us want to. Fiona? She's tried everything to get close to us. At first, she acted like she cared. She'd say things like, "We're family now, let's make this work." All this fake stuff. She'd try to act sweet, to pretend like she was the one who cared about us the most. But I wasn't buying it. She's just as much to blame for what happened as Dad. She was the one who was willing to tear our family apart for her own selfish reasons. I told her straight up that I'd never see her as part of my family, and that's not something I can change. No matter how much she cried, how much she tried to make nice, I wasn't buying into it. And Dad? He wasn't happy about that. We'd argue about it all the time. He didn't like that I wouldn't accept Fiona, but I didn't care. I wasn't going to pretend like everything was okay when it clearly wasn't. He didn't get it. He probably still doesn't, but that's just who he is now. He's not the dad I thought I knew. He's just some guy who messed up everything, and now he has to deal with the consequences. But somehow he's still trying to act like nothing happened. So the situation just kept getting worse. About 3 weeks ago, my little brother, Tyler, had a really bad asthma attack. I remember it so clearly. He'd been coughing a lot that day, but it got so much worse so fast. My mom rushed him to the hospital, and we were all really scared. He's had asthma his whole life, but this was on another level. I knew something was seriously wrong when he couldn't breathe right, and his face was pale. We all felt so helpless, but the worst part was what happened after we got there. Now, remember how Tyler had basically stopped talking to Dad at this point? He didn't want anything to do with him after everything that had happened with Fiona. It wasn't like he hated Dad, but how could he even look at him the same way after what he did? It wasn't just the affair. It was everything that came after. The divorce, the marriage to Fiona, the way Dad had completely checked out from being a father to us. How could he just go on with his life like nothing had changed? So, when Tyler went to the hospital, it wasn't just about the asthma. It was everything he had been feeling. He didn't want Fiona there. He didn't want to see her, didn't want her around. So, he specifically told the hospital staff not to let Fiona visit him. He made it clear. And you know what? The staff respected his wishes. Fiona wasn't allowed in. But then, nothing. No Dad. I don't even know what was going through his head at the time. Tyler was sick, really sick, and Dad couldn't even find the time to come visit him. He didn't even pick up the phone when Tyler tried to reach him. I mean, how do you do that to your son? Tyler was in the hospital, and all he wanted was for Dad to show up, to be there for him like a dad should. But no, he didn't. I'm not sure what I expected, but I guess I was just waiting for some sign that maybe, just maybe, Dad would realize what he was doing. Maybe he'd get it, you know, that we were his kids and we needed him. But no, he didn't even care enough to show up when Tyler needed him most. After that, it was like a wall went up. Tyler stopped calling Dad. He stopped replying to his texts. And honestly, I don't blame him. What was the point? Dad had made his choice. He chose Fiona. And when the time came for him to prove he could still be a father, he wasn't there. He wasn't even trying. Tyler's not the kind of person who holds grudges, but I could see the pain in his eyes. He wanted Dad to be there. But after that, he couldn't keep pretending like it was okay. Tyler didn't deserve to be treated that way, and neither did I. Neither of us did. The whole situation just left me feeling empty. I wasn't surprised, but I was still angry. How could he just leave his son hanging like that? How could he not even care when Tyler was in the hospital fighting for air? It wasn't just a betrayal of trust. It was a betrayal of everything a dad is supposed to be. After that, things between us and Dad got even worse. I could see that Tyler was done trying. He didn't want anything to do with him anymore. And I didn't blame him. I didn't want anything to do with him either. Things started spiraling fast after the hospital incident. Tyler's anger was palpable, and to be honest, I was just as furious. But what really took me by surprise was the way Dad reacted. You would think he'd be more concerned about Tyler's well-being after all that, but instead he started making it all about himself. He would call me, trying to guilt-trip me into getting Tyler to talk to him, but I was having none of it. I could see right through it. He was more concerned about his own feelings than actually fixing things with his sons. It was like he didn't even care about making up for the things he'd done wrong. The more I saw of him, the more disgusted I became. I'd never been close to Dad after the affair, but I had always held on to the hope that he'd eventually realize the damage he'd caused and try to fix things. But this was different. I could feel him pushing further and further away from us, and it hurt. It really did. I didn't want to hear his excuses anymore. I didn't want to hear him tell me how hard it was to balance everything, how he was just trying to move on from the past. The thing was, moving on doesn't mean erasing what you've done. It doesn't mean leaving your kids behind because you found someone new. And then came the night everything hit a boiling point. I'll never forget it. Dad called me late one night, sounding completely exasperated. He'd been talking to his friends, venting about how hard things were between us. He couldn't understand why I wasn't just over it, why I couldn't just accept Fiona into our lives. He said I was being immature, that I needed to grow up and stop holding a grudge against Fiona. I was sick of hearing it. I'd heard him tell me for so long that he was trying with us, but none of it felt real. I didn't feel like a priority to him anymore, and neither did Tyler. Fiona was his priority now. She was the one he wanted to make things work with, and if that meant losing his relationship with his sons, so be it. That's how it felt, anyway. So, when he was venting that night, I finally snapped. It wasn't just frustration with him anymore. It was years of hurt, anger, and disappointment, all wrapped into one moment. I told him flat out that he should be ready to never see me or Tyler again. I told him that at the end of the day, he wouldn't have us anymore. All he'd have left was Fiona, the person who helped destroy everything we had. I could feel the tension in the room as soon as those words left my mouth. It was like everything froze. I didn't care if he got upset, though. I wasn't the one who had betrayed the family. I wasn't the one who had chosen someone else over my kids. And I wasn't the one who had ruined everything. That was him, not me, not Tyler. It was his mess to clean up, not ours. I remember him getting defensive, telling me that I shouldn't talk about Fiona like that, but I wasn't backing down. Fiona was just his mistake, and she wasn't going to get to play the part of the family while he ignored us. I wasn't going to pretend that everything was fine when it clearly wasn't. She wasn't the person who was going to fix things. She was just the person who made it worse. He didn't like what I said, obviously. He was pissed. But the truth was, I didn't care. I was tired of pretending that things were okay when they were far from it. And then, of course, he went to Mom. He told her what I had said, probably hoping she would side with him. But she didn't. She knew exactly what he had done. She knew how much he'd hurt us, how much he'd pushed us aside for Fiona. He was angry that I wouldn't forgive him, but why should I? After everything he'd done, after everything he'd put us through, I had no reason to. After I dropped the bombshell on Dad that night, things only got worse. It wasn't like he suddenly saw the light and realized what he'd done. Instead, he shut down, retreated into his little bubble with Fiona, and pretty much stopped trying to fix anything with me and Tyler. It was clear that, in his mind, we were the problem. He acted like we were the ones who had broken the family, not him. Mom was pissed when she heard what happened, but she wasn't surprised. She had been seeing this all unfold from the beginning, and I think, in a way, she'd expected me to react this way. She knew that I wasn't the kind of person who could just forgive and forget when I felt betrayed. She had tried to warn me about the damage Dad had done, but it was hard to listen to that at first. As for Tyler, he wasn't handling things well at all. He didn't talk much after the hospital incident, but I could see how much it was eating at him. He had wanted to believe that our dad would come through for him, but now he felt completely abandoned. Tyler stopped calling him after the hospital, and every time Dad tried to reach out, Tyler ignored him. It hurt him even more, I could tell. But he was stubborn, just like me, and he wasn't going to back down either. It wasn't like we were just angry at Dad for the affair. That was part of it, but it was everything else too. It was the way he completely shut us out, the way he chose Fiona over us without even thinking twice. It was like he didn't care about what he had destroyed in the process. He didn't understand why we were upset. He couldn't see past his own guilt and his need to justify his actions. There were a lot of nights when I would lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, wondering how things had gone so wrong. It was hard to even think about what had been lost. It wasn't just the family we had before. It was the idea of what a family was supposed to be. It was the trust, the support, the unconditional love. And Dad had broken all of it. Every time I thought about it, I would get angry again. And Tyler, despite his quietness, was angry too. We had both been left behind. But it was even worse when I looked at Dad and saw how much he had moved on. It felt like he didn't care about the past anymore. Fiona was his new family, and we were just out of the picture. That night, when I confronted him about his priorities, I thought I had finally reached the breaking point. But the reality of it hit me slowly. He wasn't just failing us as a father. He was also failing himself. He couldn't even admit that he had made a mistake. He couldn't even see the damage he had caused. Instead, he kept defending Fiona and trying to get us to just accept her. I was beyond frustrated. How could he expect us to just act like everything was fine when it clearly wasn't? But that's when I realized something else, too. It wasn't just about Dad anymore. It was about me and Tyler. It was about us standing up for ourselves, even if it meant losing him. I wasn't going to let him gaslight me into thinking that everything was okay. I wasn't going to keep pretending that this new family was a replacement for the one we'd lost. It was a painful realization, but it was the truth. Dad had made his choice, and now I had to make mine. Things started to spiral quickly after that night. I couldn't shake the feeling that no matter what we did, Dad wasn't ever going to see the damage he'd caused. It wasn't just the affair, it was the lies, the manipulation, and the fact that he never once acknowledged how his choices affected us. It was like we were just an afterthought. Even when I tried to talk to him, it was always about how hard things were for him, how difficult it was to deal with Fiona and his own guilt. But he never once stopped to ask how we were doing. Never once did he ask how it felt to be his kids, watching him move on without so much as a backward glance. Tyler had stopped talking to him altogether by this point. Every time Dad tried to reach out, Tyler ignored his calls, his texts, everything. It broke my heart to see how my brother was hurting, but I also couldn't blame him. He was 13, too young to be thrown into this mess without his dad even trying to fix it. And now, Dad wasn't even trying. There was one moment that really drove the point home. It was about 2 weeks after I had told Dad what I thought of him and Fiona. We were at Mom's house when she got a call from Dad. He wanted to know if we'd be going to his place for the weekend. Mom, who had been watching the tension build between us and Dad, looked at me with that "do what you want" kind of expression. "I'm not going," I said without hesitation. "Neither is Tyler." Mom didn't say anything at first. I knew she understood why. She was angry too. Angry at Dad for abandoning us, for prioritizing Fiona over his own kids. And that anger had built up over the years, even if she didn't always show it. But then Tyler surprised me. He stood up, grabbed his phone, and walked into the other room. When he came back, he told me that he had called Dad and told him straight up that he didn't want to see him anymore. He didn't want anything to do with him, not as long as Fiona was part of the package. I could tell Tyler was struggling with his decision, but I was proud of him for standing his ground. He was finally taking a stand for himself, just like I had. And for the first time in a long while, I realized that we were both in this together. It wasn't just me carrying the weight of the betrayal. Tyler felt it too. But things didn't get better. They got worse. Dad tried calling us several times after that, sending text after text, asking why we weren't answering. He begged for us to just come to his house, but we both ignored him. It wasn't that we didn't care about him at all. It was that we couldn't care for him the way he wanted us to, not after everything he had done. And then came the final straw. One evening, Dad called and left a voicemail. I didn't listen to it right away. But when I did, I couldn't believe what I heard. It wasn't an apology. It wasn't an admission of guilt. It was a plea for sympathy. He asked how long we were going to hold the affair over his head, how long we were going to punish him for his mistakes. He said he couldn't move on with his life if we kept holding on to the past. I felt the anger surge up in me again. The same anger that had been building for years. How dare he? How dare he think that we owed him forgiveness for tearing our family apart? How dare he act like we were the ones who had wronged him? I wasn't having it anymore. I didn't care what he said or how much he tried to justify himself. I was done. The next day, I told Mom I didn't want to go to Dad's house anymore. I didn't want to see him. I didn't want to be around Fiona. And I definitely didn't want to pretend like everything was fine when it wasn't. It was over. I had made up my mind, but as soon as I told Mom, I felt this weight lift off my shoulders. It was like I was finally taking control of the situation. I didn't need Dad's approval anymore. I didn't need to beg him for his love. It hurt, but it was also freeing. Dad had chosen Fiona. He had chosen a life without us. And as much as I wished he would fight for us, I knew it wasn't going to happen. I had to let go. We all had to let go. And yet, despite the relief I felt, I couldn't shake the emptiness. It wasn't just about the broken family, it was about the lost relationship with a father I used to look up to, a man I thought could never hurt me. The days that followed were a blur of mixed emotions. There was this part of me that felt relief, like a weight had been lifted. But at the same time, there was this constant ache in my chest, a painful reminder of everything I had lost. Not just the family, but the idea of what my family used to be. There was no going back, and that truth stung more than I could have imagined. Tyler and I spent more time together, which was honestly the only good thing that came out of the whole situation. We leaned on each other in ways we never had before. As much as I resented my dad, I couldn't help but feel bad for Tyler. He was just a kid, trying to make sense of everything. He was still holding out hope that one day things might go back to normal. But deep down, we both knew it was never going to happen. Dad's calls became less frequent after that. At first, I thought it was because he was giving us space. But then I realized it was more likely because he had given up. He didn't have anything left to fight for. Not his kids, not our trust. All he had was Fiona, and from the way he acted, it seemed like that was enough for him. And then came the one call I didn't expect. One night, as I was finishing up my homework, I saw Dad's number on my phone. I froze. I hadn't spoken to him in weeks. I thought he had given up. But there he was, trying once again to reach out. I debated whether or not to pick up. Part of me was curious, even though I knew I shouldn't be. The other part of me didn't want to hear whatever excuses he had this time. But I answered. Hello? Hey, it's Dad. His voice was shaky, like he was trying to find the right words. Yeah, I know who it is, I said, keeping my tone flat. I've been thinking a lot about everything, he started. I know I messed up, and I know you're angry. I just want to say that I'm sorry. I don't know what else to say. I felt this strange sense of disconnect. This wasn't the apology I had hoped for. It didn't feel real. It didn't feel like he understood the extent of what he had done. It just felt empty. You're sorry? I asked, not sure how to process what he was saying. That's it? You think saying sorry will make it better? I didn't mean to hurt you, he said. I didn't mean to hurt Tyler either. I don't know how to fix this. I don't know how to make it right. You can't, I said, my voice tight. You can't fix this. What you did is unforgivable. You've broken everything, and now all you have left is Fiona. There was a long pause. I could hear him breathing on the other end of the line, but he didn't say anything. It was like he was waiting for me to say something else, but I had nothing left to give. There was nothing else to say. I think this is it, Dad, I said, my voice barely above a whisper. I don't want to see you anymore. I don't want to talk to you. You made your choice and we're not part of it. His voice cracked just a little. I get it. I just want you to know that I love you. But I didn't feel loved. I felt betrayed, abandoned, and hollow. I felt like I was saying goodbye to someone who had already left me a long time ago, and this was just the final act. I'm sorry, Dad, but you've lost me. And with that, I hung up. I didn't look back. That was the last conversation I ever had with him. So, what do you think? Do you think I was too harsh? Or do you understand why I had to cut him out of my life? It feels like a weight has been lifted, but it also hurts in ways I didn't expect. Let me know what you think in the comments below. Don't forget to like and subscribe for more of these stories, and stay tuned for the next one.